let's jump in to sort of the fun part. This is where we kind of take a look at the story that's happening on the internet. Q brings us some interesting ones to talk about. We just riff on it, Greg. It's always fun.
Love it.
Just to get your opinion. Q, what do we got?
So today, what we have is an article titled "The Founder Building a Wealth Management Product Her Grandmother Would Have Loved." So I'll get that up on the screen here. So basically, this article is about a lady named Mikal Jean-Lee-White, and she created Wealthmore because she was fed up with how traditional finance keeps most Americans out of the wealth building game. With a $5,000 minimum, Wealthmore connects people with advisor-led portfolios and financial planning services, aiming to make wealth management accessible to everyone, not just the top 1%. Inspired by her grandmother's struggles, Mikal's platform has already raised over $1 million in pre-seed funding and is gearing up for a full launch by the end of the year. What do you guys think?
Well, I think it's amazing, right? I know a person I know, Brad Gerstner, is pushing for kind of the new kind of investment in every human. So basically, when you're issued a social security number as being born as a child, you should also get a bank account that has some money in it, right? It starts growing. It's amazing to me the amount of wealth in this country and that chasm between the haves and have-nots. And it's amazing to me how just like this woman is saying, what I think is fascinating and really cool. Everybody should have the opportunity to invest, right? Or at least understand the market, right? I mean, if somebody had $50 in an account in, say, the stock market, they would have more interest in the stock market, right? They would learn more. They would try to educate themselves more. That's across any socioeconomic group divide that may be. And I think that things like this are amazing because one of the things I think is lacking in our schools in the U.S. is like, I mean, I remember when I was in like 8th grade, I think I had a class where it's like they taught you how to write a check. And they taught you how to open a bank account. And I mean, that doesn't exist in today's world. Like school is not teaching you fundamentals of how they don't teach credit. They don't teach how to acquire things and loans versus a lease on a car. I mean, I think there's fundamental things in our lives that these tools should help us learn more about at young ages.
You know what I like about this story is big TAM, but it fits in between. And this is what I want founders who are watching this take away from this story. Is you look at the market and you look at who's being served and who's not being served. And when they're not being served, if they're underserved, underrepresented, underestimated, what do they end up doing? So let's take a look at financial wealth management. And I've been around a lot of fintechs in my day. And you've got these big portfolios. So I know some very, very, very well-off financial managers. Like they do extremely well. And they manage like $10 million at a time per person, right? That's the level of wealth that they manage. And so you've got this white glove service at the upper end. And then the people who don't have that money, because you're just not going to make enough commissions as financial advisors. Someone brings you $5,000. So what do people end up doing is they go to the do it yourself. And that's where the Robin Hoods, that's where up here in Canada, we got Wealthsimple. Like you've got all these tools that are going to help you. And now it's automated. But then you've got this middle group that's been overlooked up to this point in time. And I think technology making it easier where now, what about the person who only has $5,000 but doesn't want to punch their own buttons? And Jen and I, we talk about this all the time. Is how do I teach you to punch the buttons? I like to punch my own buttons, but not everybody wants to do that. And so, how do you serve them with the same level as having an advisor? And so, there's this gap right in the middle. You got the people with big money on this side, and you got the do-it-yourselfers. And then I want someone to do it with me. Not necessarily do it all for me, but do it with me. And how do we make that cheaper and more accessible? And that's where I think this startup is sitting. But here's the curious question. And this is where, Q, you do some more research on this. But let's just call out the elephant in the room. We're talking about racial disparity, income inequality, another big, massive TAM, very important. And so, Q, what's the sentiment out there with this story in terms of, hey, this is for people who are experiencing that racial inequality? Like, is this a major driving factor or what's going on?
It is a major driving factor for Jean-Lee-White, who created this concept. She was basically talking about how her grandmother was very knowledgeable with finances, and she didn't feel her grandmother had the resources at her fingertips to be able to take advantage of all of the knowledge that she had. And she was feeling like if we had something like Wealthmore back in her grandmother's day, she thinks that her grandma would have been further along and her family as well.
That's the type of story that really speaks to investors. And you know what? This is a good term to think about. That's founder market fit, right? She understands her market. And I look at that. Like if I've got someone, who doesn't fit, let's just say the regular white guy, okay? Just going to say it, right? And they're saying, I'm going to go help people of this particular race or orientation or this underserved segment, and there's no connection, there's no identity, and there's no past, there's no domain expertise, to me, it's not there. But the chances significantly rise when you say, hey, I can relate to these people. I've got a story that's driving me, and I actually look at that. So that's one thing that stands out for me, Greg, when we're doing these pitch competitions or these pitch reviews, is when someone can tell me they have personal connection to the problem they're solving, I start to get a little more excited. What about you?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's no question whatsoever, right? I mean, that personal connection, and you're right. We hear these pitches where the founder starts off and talks about, I lost someone to this disease, or I was involved in this, or this happened to me, or when you can relate to them, it's like that instant credibility, right? I mean, it's like you've got a doctor that says, I'm a doctor, I'm board certified in this. You say, okay, I trust what you say, and that on that topic. So, as founders, we've got to find that position, right? I'm passionate about this. I'm, in the cybersecurity space. I mean, look, I've built platforms that have been hacked by cybersecurity, hacks, right? So I try to talk about that in some of my presentations. Like, look, I built this platform, we got hacked. I had an employee who took the data and put it on the internet and was trying to hold me hostage for $10 million. I mean, it's a relatable story that, can connect it and bring it through. And I think that's always a way to get to my heart.